comparison between the past and now. He's not saying that, well, there's a chance I might interfere in the future. He's more saying that I haven't done it in the past, so you should really trust me now. But it's not implying that he still might interfere in the future. Any other questions on that? It was a good question. Okay. All right, so I need new volunteers. So we don't have enough men in the room but this is George and Jack. So who wants to be George? So I needed somebody who hasn't read yet. Who wants to be George? Oh, anybody wants to be George? Raise your hand if you want to be George. Well, somebody that hasn't volunteered yet.
I'm George. Jack.
Well, I need new people. So you're George. You're George. Who wants to be Jack? Somebody who has not read yet. Okay. So, yes.
Wow, my God.
Okay. So George and Jack. So George, go ahead.
Jack, would you please read this letter of application I've just written? I'd like to have your opinion.
I'd be glad to tell you what I think.
If you don't think it's any good, please say so. I really want to get this job.
You look fine to me, but I have one suggestion.
Good, let's have it.
If I were you, I'd change the beginning. You should write about your education first.
Good idea, Jack. What do you think about the second part?
Now that you ask me, I think it's too short. You should include more information about your professional experience.
You're right. I'll change it. How do you feel about the last part of the letter?
Very good, but unless I'm mistaken, you should say something about your family too.
I agree. I appreciate your helping me, Jack. Do you think the end and all right, and it's all right?
Oh yes, George. But personally, I believe a business letter should end with your family faithfully, not yours sincerely.
I think I better pair up the letter and start again.
Oh, don't do that, George. Just make the few changes I suggested, and your letter will be perfect.
Okay. So that story was really boring. Okay, but we'll talk about it anyways. So George and Jack, what are they doing? In general, what are they doing?
George is going to apply for a job, and he asking for advice. If what Jack think about his application.
His application letter, yeah. So George has just written the letter. He's asking George for his opinion. Asking if you don't think it's any good, please let me know. Jack initially thinks it looks pretty good, but he does have some suggestions. He says you should write about your education first. He says, good idea. What do you think about the second part? He says, now that you've asked me for my opinion, I'm going to give it. I think it's too short. You should include more information about your professional experience. You're right. I'll change it. how do you feel about the last part of the letter? Jack says, very good, but unless I'm mistaken, you should say something about your family too. So he's still giving his opinion, but in a very polite way. George says, I agree. I appreciate you helping me, Jack. Do you think the end is all right? He says, yeah, or yes, George. But personally, I believe a business letter should end with yours faithfully, not yours sincerely. I don't know about that. That's just his personal opinion. So, initially, George is saying it looks pretty good, but then he starts to give his opinions, and there's several things he would change, to where at the end, George says, I think I will what? Tear up the letter. So George, after Jack is suggesting all these things for George to change, even though Jack says it looks pretty good, George is like, instead of changing everything here, maybe I'll just shred, tear up, rip, to break apart the letter again, so that and start from scratch. What does start from scratch mean? Have you heard that before? No. Okay. Good. The very last thing we're going to talk about is
From scratch.
so this is another phrase that's used to say we're going to start basically with nothing. We're going to make something to try to solve a problem. So these, okay, that's a good example. These cookies. A lot of times we would say, I made those from scratch. If I say I made those from scratch, that means I put together all the ingredients, I found the ingredients, I built everything myself, I mixed everything together and baked them. Versus if I already had some pre-packaged box that had it all mixed together for me and all I did was bake it, that's not making it from scratch. Making it from scratch is if I put everything together myself. I start from the very beginning. I buy everything, buy the ingredients, I put all the ingredients together, I mix all the ingredients. That's starting from scratch. Same thing with here. If I say I start from scratch, that means that I am starting from the very beginning. I have nothing to work with. Anything that I need to have to work with, I have to get myself. In other words, it's saying I'm starting from the very beginning. So in this case, I used that phrase instead of this one. It says, I think I'd better tear up the letter and start again. Sometimes I might say, start from scratch. Start from the very beginning.
Teacher, scratch means irritate. Scratch.
Well, yeah, not in this case. But let me see if it has a definition in here. If it's not in here, then I'll talk about it next time because it's kind of an idiom. But let me see. Okay, good. This is the exact definition that I gave, so at least I know I'm not wrong. To start from scratch, again, is a phrase. To say to start something from the very beginning. So the other definition it gives is to hurt, to rub your skin, to make marks by scratching. That's not what it means. This scratch means something entirely different in this case. Basically, this means to start from the very beginning. It's a phrase used. I'm not sure where it came from, but I'll look it up next time. but I use it quite a bit.
Start from the very beginning.
Very.
Okay. Another example is, I've used this example a few times already. Well, I've used this movie a few times already. That NASA movie I keep on mentioning, only because I like it a lot. I like it a lot. The movie is called Apollo 13. And again, the astronauts are in space, they're trying to get home. And these people on Earth are trying to figure out ways to get them home. They have never dealt with this problem before, so they have no idea how to solve it. So let's pretend that their first idea doesn't work out. It won't work to bring the astronauts back from space to Earth. So once they know that their first idea doesn't work out, they say, oh, well, you know, start at the beginning, start from scratch. Start from scratch. Start at the very beginning to try to even just figure out ideas to try to start with to help get these people back to Earth. We talked about an idiom before that is very similar to start from scratch.
Back to the drawing board.
Back to the drawing board. Okay. Yeah. So when I say back to the drawing board, remember I'm talking about going back to the beginning and starting to just from the beginning try to figure out the problem. To start from scratch, I'm at the beginning as well, trying to solve a problem from the beginning. So again, very similar meanings.